Hi, this is Scott Richardson, the bench doctor from the Liberal Gun Club. And today I thought I'd take a few minutes and show you how to inspect and service your AR-15 bolt carrier group, clean it, lubricate it, and put it back together. This one doesn't need a heck of a lot of cleaning because I've taken it apart and lubricated it just recently. But it's good for demonstration purposes. So you're going to remove it from your gun, obviously. And the first thing you're going to want to do is remove this cotter pin right here. So you can just reach in there with a little pick or a screwdriver and pop that out, set it aside. Okay. Now from there, we're going to remove our firing pin. That you can see that down in here. That's the shiny little nub. You can just turn the bolt carrier over and give it a tap on the bench. The pin should come right out. Okay. Now from there, we need to remove our bolt. So you're going to push it in. This goes in and out. So we're going to push it in. You'll notice here that it's perpendicular to the orientation of the bolt carrier. So you're just going to want to turn it so it's parallel, like so. And once this is parallel to the bolt carrier body, you can just reach in there. I use a little screwdriver because I don't have any fingernails, and it just pops right out. Set it aside. Now from there, you can just pull your bolt straight out. Okay, that's the complete disassembly of an AR-15 bolt carrier, and these are all the pieces that you have to contend with. Pretty straightforward. So now let's go through what you would do to clean one and lubricate it, and the things to look for. So starting with the bolt carrier itself, I kind of clean it just like I do a gun barrel. I'll take a brush. This is a brush for a Glock 9mm, but it works pretty well on this. And you're just going to use a nylon brush or a brass brush. You don't want to use steel. It will scratch and damage things inside guns. Steel brushes are special purpose only. I never use them. So what I'll do is I'll dip this in some solvent, and I'll run it inside the bolt carrier body, and I'll give it a little scrubbing. And then leave it wet and let it sit in there and work its magic, breaking some of that carbon loose. I'll do it the same on this end. And you can see that in here, this is machined a little smoother. So we're going to want to get that nice and clean. And I'll take, once again, and I'll dip my brush in solvent. I'll run it in there, and I'll give it some twists, break that stuff up. Okay, and then let it set. I usually let them set for 5 minutes. I'll get them wet and break the carbon loose and just let it set and go clean the rest of the bolt carrier, and then come back to it. And then you come back with a cleaning rod with patches, and you clean it just like you do a gun barrel. You run your patches down in there and you swab it out, clean it till your patches come back clean. Scrub down the inside of the bolt carrier body, and like you would any other gun part. And you might want to clean and inspect the gas key. This piece right here is called a gas key. You can take a pipe cleaner, or sometimes a little 22 jag or brush will fit down in there, and you can scrub out any accumulated carbon there. And these two bolts right here hold the gas key to the carrier, and you'll notice that the metal is deformed just slightly here in these 4 places. And that's done from the factory because it's called staking. So they will put these little indentations there. It deforms the metal over to hold these bolts and keep them from backing out. So you'll want to inspect that and make sure that that's all in place and that this isn't loose. If this loosens up, gas will escape and the gun won't cycle properly, and it will get the inside of your gun absolutely filthy from all that gas, in the firing area. So once that's all done, you can set that aside. Now we're going to go ahead and concentrate on the bolt itself. And the most difficult part of cleaning an AR-15 bolt carrier group is this surface right here. So the carbon will accumulate here, and it forms a crust that's almost stone-like. It's very hard. It's the accumulation of gas and carbon, and sometimes the solvents that you use to lubricate the gun, and it forms a very hard surface. So you're going to want to clean that off, and you can do it with a pick. You can do it with a little bit of screwdriver, or I have a special purpose-built tool There's a lot of tools out there made for this purpose, but this matches that contour, and it scrapes. You know, you can see that it will scrape that surface down and get all of that accumulated crud off of there. So once that's done and clean and pretty smooth, you can take a Scotch-Brite brush, works pretty well too, if it isn't too caked on there. And wipe it down with a patch. Now on this side of the bolt, these are your locking lugs. These go into the chamber and lock in place. So these are a safety consideration. You're going to want to inspect these carefully and make sure there's no chips, cracks, or make sure none of them are missing. If you have any issues with these locking lugs, just replace the bolt. It's not an expensive part, and it can have catastrophic consequences if this fails. So be very careful, inspect them, take a good look at them. And then when you're cleaning the bolt itself, get in here where this crevice is and give it a good cleaning with a pick. Works really well. I use dental picks a lot for these types of applications. Get down in here under your extractor and make sure that there's no carbon accumulation in there. You might take a toothpick or a regular dental pick and clean out that little orifice. Make sure that that's not got anything built up in there. Okay, and then inspect your gas rings. Make sure there should be 3 of these, and you're going to want to inspect them. Make sure that there are 3 and that none of them are damaged or misshapen. They're very simple to replace, and they're very cheap if one of them is missing or if you have any doubt about it. I'll show you how to test these once I get the bolt back together to make sure that they're still doing their job properly. You can see this is pretty dirty. It's stained from years of use, but there is no carbon accumulated on there. So anyway, once that's done, you can take your firing pin. Usually I just take a little bit of solvent and wipe it down, give it a good inspection, and inspect the tip of it right here to make sure that it's not damaged, mushroomed over, chipped, broken. This is also a very simple piece to replace. I carry one of these and some spare gas rings in my little toolbox, range parts, in case they ever fail. And I always keep a couple of these laying around. They're easy to lose, and they do bend. So if one gets bent, it's easier to just replace it than try to straighten it out. So I carry a few of those as well. Okay, and then you can take this little camming pin, clean it, give it an inspection, and you'll notice that this hole right here is where our firing pin passes through, like that. So this goes down holds the bolt in place, and the firing pin passes through it. So when we put this back together, we need to orient this properly. When we first put it in, it's oriented incorrectly, so we need to twist it. So to lubricate the AR-15, I take a little bit of gun grease, and I just kind of put it on the sides of the bolt like that. You don't need a whole lot, just a little bit. Okay, and then I insert it back into my bolt carrier, and you'll notice that this has 2 sides. This pin will only fit through one side. The other side is not big enough to accept it. So when we're going to want to orient it so that the larger side is up, and you'll see that corresponds to this port right here where the pin goes through. So we'll slide that in with the larger side facing up and get it oriented like that. Okay, and we're going to take our pin, we're going to drop it down in there. A little bit of finagling, like so. Pull the bolt out, and now you'll see that this is parallel to the orientation of the bolt carrier, and in that configuration, the firing pin can't travel through. So we're going to want to turn it so it's perpendicular, like so. Okay. Now it's in the right orientation. Everything's in the right place. You take your firing pin, you drop it back through, and this can only go one way. It's only going to go in one spot, so you don't have to worry about messing anything up. And it just drops right in. Bear with me here. Okay, like that. Okay, you'll notice that it's sitting all the way in. Now you're going to want to replace your little cotter pin. This just drops right back through. Give it a little push, and once it's down below the surface here, it's in the right position. So there's a fully reassembled AR-15 bolt carrier group. And then from here, I will take a little bit more gun grease and I'll grease the body of the bolt carrier like so. And I'll take a little bit of gun oil and I'll put a couple of drops in each one of these little holes. Maybe cycle the bolt a little bit just to work that around in there. Okay, now you can insert it back in the gun and run it, and it should give you many years of faithful service if you take it out and maintain it and clean it about every 500 to 1,000 rounds. Hope that's helpful, and we'll talk to you soon. Thank you.